Hello and welcome to the Integrate This EdTech podcast, the go-to digital space for educators and tech enthusiasts. I'm your host, Jeremy Mikla, along with my co-host, David Berner. Together, we are your navigators through the enthralling world of technology and education. As we unpack the most innovative EdTech tools and strategies, we invite you to join us in sculpting dynamic tech-savvy classrooms. Poised for today's digital learning odyssey, let's plunge into the depths of innovation.
Last week, we demonstrated features of Google Drive. You can find that video and more on our YouTube page. This week, Jeremy and I are exploring the best uses of Google Sheets for educators. As always, we'd love to hear about any tips that you'd like to share with others, so please leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to join our growing community by subscribing, liking, and staying tuned for more tech mentoring.
David and I will also be at the TIE conference in South Dakota, April 15th through the 16th. So after you pay your taxes, come out and see us. If you have other events, presentations that you would like us to do, please reach out to us on our socials. You can find those links in the show description. So let's kick it off with Google Sheets here today. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is find the spreadsheet here that I have some of my data linked to, and I'm going to share that screen here with this example one that I came up with here is, there's many different uses for Google Sheets, and I just thought one example that might be relative here to teachers would be a SPED behavior tracker form. And so I dump some data into a Google form, and I use the Sheets function of Google Form to show my data in this spreadsheet format. So you're going to see here that we have three teachers. We have Professor McGonagall, Professor Snape, and Hagrid, and four students. We have Hermione, Harry, Draco, and Ron. And each of those teachers daily is expected to award points to those students based on how well they stay on task, how respectful they are toward their peers and towards adults. So, you've probably seen many other forms that are something similar to that, maybe with different behavior criteria, but in the rankings that go along with them. So right here, I just have this spreadsheet with all of this data for a week about these four students. And I want to do some things here to be able to dig into this data as well as to kind of make it a little bit more presentable. So the first thing that I want to do here is this first row of your spreadsheet here. If you're going to want to be able to sort by these different columns, you're going to want to freeze the data in this first row. There's a simple, easy way to do that. I'm just going to highlight this first row, go up to View, and then choose Freeze. And I'm just going to say up to row 1. Now, what that is going to allow me to do is be able to sort by any column that I want to, and that first row is going to stay in place. So for example, if I wanted to be able to sort by student, I'm going to click on the little triangle there in column B where it says student, and I'm just going to sort this sheet from A to Z. So when I do that, you'll see Draco's, all of his entries are sorted out, and then Harry's, Hermione's, and Ron's, right? And so it focused on that particular column, but all of the rest of the data in that row went with it with that particular move. So that's kind of one thing that you should do here right away when you open up a spreadsheet such as this, if it's not already frozen for you. Another thing that to me makes this a little bit hard to read and follow is that there's differences in right and left justification within the different columns. For just a thing that Google Sheets tries to do is if it has numerical data, it likes to right justify it. And if it has text data, it likes to left justify it. But it kind of loses a little bit of that meaning to me here if these dates are right next to that student. So another thing I can do here is to change that justification by clicking on that column and then going to my toolbar across the top. And instead of it being right justified, I'm going to choose to make it left. And I override then that feature that says put all numbers to the right. I can do that same thing here with these three columns by selecting all of them at one time and changing them to left justified also. Now, sometimes you may also say that the standard size for these cells might be a little too wide and you can reduce them down. So if you grab the line on the column here and drag it over, you'll see then that it reduces some of those spaces. Well, again, don't be afraid to drag the columns to the width that you need them. Another useful thing here is sometimes you get text that is going to run outside of this particular cell. So respectful toward, and then I can't read it. So one of the things that you can do in that particular case, again, up here by these toolbars, there is a text wrapping button. If I choose to text wrap this cell, it will make that row bigger, but now all of a sudden I can see all of the words that are in that particular cell and it stays in that particular column. So I know exactly what that is. So those are some helpful things here to help organize your data and to sort your data. But I might want to pull out data about a particular student. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a tab or a separate sheet that's going to go along the bottom that's going to be for this particular student, Draco Malfoy. So to do that, and I want to keep all of that stuff the same, there's a couple of different ways to do this. I could go down and hit this plus button that is in the way bottom left corner of my Google Sheet, and it would make a new sheet for me, and it puts it right here, as you can see, sheet 1. The other way that you can do that is if I want to bring the data with it and not have to copy and paste everything over, I can go and I can duplicate that whole sheet. And you can see it gave me one across the bottom. That's a copy of it, right? I don't want to leave it called that. If I double click on the text there, I can rename that sheet. And now I can switch back and forth between all the data I have about Draco, about Hermione, about Harry, and about Ron. And I've done some sorting already about these other ones as well. So now that I have this one, and I just want it to be Draco, since I've sorted it by Draco here in the student column, I can go and select all the rest of the data, go up to Edit and Delete rows 17 through 58. So as you can see, I just have the Draco data here. Now, I didn't lose all the rest because I have this master one still here that has all of the rest of the data. But I've just separated it here out by Draco in particular. So that's one of the things here that's kind of nice about these Google Sheets too, is to be able to break down in the same document and still have all these different tabs that you need. Now, the next thing here that I want to be able to do is I want to be able to label this a little bit easier to know what student I'm talking about. So I'm going to go up here to my first row again, and I'm going to add another row above the one I'm working in. So you could see it got added above this frozen line. So whenever I scroll data, that line will be there also. Now I'm going to grab these cells here from A1 to F1, because that's kind of the range of my sheet data. And I'm going to do another thing here underneath the formatting menu, and I'm going to merge these cells together. And when I do that, you could see there's no longer that little line separating these different columns. So now it treats this one as, or this particular thing as one giant cell. So I can go and I can type Draco Malfoy, and I can go behavior tracking sheet. Right? Now, what happens here if I want to change the size of this so it stands out a little bit more, and you could see that it gets bigger as I do so. The other thing that I could do is I could change the color of this, and maybe I want to make that maybe a light blue color here. Okay, and you
You were
could
gonna
see
say,
it.
I thought you were gonna say green because Slytherin, but
Oh, okay, that's a good point. Let's make Draco a greenish color here,
there you go. That's
right?
Slytherin
That's
color.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Although, yeah. Now that you say that, I did make Harry red, and I
Did
didn't
you?
really do that because that's a Gryffindor color, right?
Yep,
Red and
yeah,
gold. Green
yep.
and black right here definitely are the Slytherin colors. Good use of that. The other thing that I want to do here too that I can show you here is I can change this to a center, and you see it centers within that merged cell range, which is kind of a nice feature to be able to have there. Okay, now I'm going to jump ahead here because I've done a little bit of setting up here on this next sheet. And this one here, as you can see, I didn't put across the top these merged cells, but I can quickly do that again. And I can go to format and I can merge them because this one is for Hermione Granger. And what color should she be? She's Gryffindor also, right? So let's make her a red, but let's change the text color. Maybe that's a little bit too dark of a red. Can I go gold on red? Ooh, look at that. I don't know if that is for accessibility the best thing to do, but it gets the point across on all the different things that you could do with this. Okay. Now, one of the things that I had done for Hermione is, if you'll notice here in the Draco one, I removed the column that said student. Why? Because it's just all about Hermione anyway. And that's a really easy thing to do here. If I select column B and I can go through here and I can go to delete column because I don't need to have Draco repeated there. So that's one of the things that I've already done on this Hermione one. The second thing that I did is I had gone through and I had sorted the column by date. So I went and chose A to Z. And so that's why you're seeing all of the February 1st ones here, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th ones going down. I also inserted a couple of other columns because I wanted to come up with an average that Hermione was getting on a particular day. So and I also wanted to sum up their total points that they would get on a particular day. So I want to show you those functions here really quick because I think they're super helpful and pretty easy to do. So just like with other Google products, there's multiple ways to do the same thing. So if I'm in a cell right here, I could go up to the functions menu that's in the toolbar, and I could choose some from here. But you can also do it just by typing in that cell. If you begin with an equal symbol, it is going to tell you what it already thinks that you want it to do. But if that's not quite it, if you want it to be a sum, like add up the numbers in a particular range, you can do that. And then you can select them by, oops, hang on here, equal sum. And then you need the parentheses. Then I can select the range that I want and close the parentheses, and it'll do it. Now, if I'm doing that and it gives me one that I see, I want this range, I can just hit the tab button and it's going to do it for me. The other nice thing here that it's going to do is if I click in this cell and I choose to copy it, it doesn't copy 15. What it copies is the formula that's entered into that cell. So now if I go and I choose to paste in this next cell, that's why you see it's not 15 anymore, it's 14. I can do the same thing here by pasting that in as a group. So let me do that here for these. Oop, I didn't select the range that time. Let me try that again. And paste those in. Now, you may also want to do a total number of points that a student might get in a particular day. So if I start here again and I go equal a sum and choose that range that I want, close the parentheses, you could see that it gave me then her total points that day. Google Sheets is pretty smart. I can go and copy this one here and paste it here. And you could see that it knows that it wants these 3 cells right above it because it uses that smart type stuff. Now, you also don't have to choose to some cells that are in a particular order that stay together all the time. You can separate out different ones that you want to by clicking on the different cells here and adding a plus button in between them. So now I'm going to get total points for all of these different added up together cells, and then close it with parentheses, and you can see it gave me total points for the week. Kind of a neat little thing that you can do. Okay, now there is another function that's also pretty helpful, and this one is called the average function. To get to it, you also start typing the equal sign, and again here, you follow the same format, so I'm just going to say that is the exact average that I want, and I choose that. And again, if I go and copy, I can go to both these days and paste. I can go to all these days and paste. I can go to all these days and paste, and just repeat that until I get to the end of the data that I want. Oops. I didn't select, no. There we go. Now, who wants all of these different numbers right here after that decimal point? I don't. Did you know that you can, if you're on a Mac, okay, you can hold down the Command key and click on each of these different individual cells without selecting the whole range in between them. Then I can go up and use another format tool called number and change them to an easier to read decimal point. So pretty slick, pretty easy to be able to do that. Again, using the same way as I did total points, you can also take the averages of these different columns right here. I'm going to skip over that just because of time. So that's kind of a nice feature to be able to use here as well. Now, one last thing that I want to get into here, and I'm not going to go too into the weeds here, but you could see I pulled out some of the data here and did some more averaging here because I wanted to make a simple chart that's going to highlight the average behavior points that Harry was getting here from his different teachers over the week. So you could see I did the number crunching of the data here. So I'm going to start off by selecting this range of cells that has the data in it that I want. Then I want to display this as a chart. So I'm going to go up to Insert and choose Chart. Now, it's going to suggest for me a chart that it thinks that I want, and actually I did want a bar graph, but it didn't necessarily have to be. So then I'm going to show you some of the things here that you can do along with your chart. So I'm going to go into the Customize tab that's up here in that top right-hand part, and I want to change that title because that title has no meaning to me. So I'm going to go and call this Harry Potter Weekly Tracker. Okay, and you can see that it changed that title right here. Then it put in here some other things too. I could add a chart subtitle, and maybe in the subtitle I want to go February 1 to February 5. Okay, and it adds that to here. I can also go and change the titles on the vertical or horizontal axis. You can see that it already put teacher in there on the horizontal one, but I could go here and I could put behavior points on that vertical axis, and you can see here then that it separates that out. Now what I like about this here is that it separates it out by teacher, yet you can kind of get a feel for what classes perhaps that Harry does a little bit better behavior wise in, and then maybe use that to help develop some strategies that perhaps Harry could do better in Snape's class. because I know it's never the teacher that's the problem. All right. So that is just kind of a simple way to create a chart. There are other charts. If you don't like this one, by the way, you saw you can move it. You can also go back and you can edit it and you can change it to a different type of chart. If you wanted to go to a line chart, for example, that's going to show some of the similar data. Or you got all of these other ones that you can choose from here. Just experiment around to see which chart is going to best reflect the data that you are trying to show. And of course, with these charts, you can copy them and paste them into a Google Doc, for example, if you wanted to. And you can make it so that if you're updating the chart, it will continue to update with it. So those are just a few of the kind of basic things that I wanted to run down on effective use of Google Sheets for educators, kind of the basics. But I know David is going to kind of kick it up a notch here for us and take a look at some other cool things that you can do with Google Sheets.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the copy of the chart thing there too. I've used that in the past where for some of our tech integration stuff where I've made some pie charts for survey results that we've got, and then just the ability to quickly paste it into like a Google Slides or things like that. I've done that in the past, so I like that.
Making that data visual is really important. No matter what. I mean, the numbers on the sheet, they're kind of nice, but you've got to find a way to make that relatable to more people.
Yep, yeah, make it presentable with
Right.
pretty colors and things like that.
Yeah.
Cool. So I don't mine is not Harry Potter themed, but I still think it's some good stuff here. But I'm gonna start by just going over if you've already got a sheet made. I wanted to first touch on comments, making comments and making notes on things. So a real simple example here would be we're gonna look at this parent teacher conferences layout that I've got. And the very first thing that you'll notice is that under the time slots, this one is on the left-hand side for the Monday uh, conferences are already complete. They're basically the way that I want them. So we're going to work over here on the Thursday side. But if you have comments already in, what's nice is whenever you hover over it, it gives you a little snapshot of what is on that space. So for this one, I just kind of went in and you'll see there's a little yellow tag there that gets put in the corner when there is a comment. So if I hover over our 430, nothing comes up because there was no comment made. And the idea with this was that the only comments I'm putting in is really the student names that I've grabbed from my gradebook example. And I just put them into this section. One really nice thing too is if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to like hover over all of these, it has where if you click on this, you'll notice it changes from when you hover over from just seeing the comment itself. When you click on the cell, it will allow you to, you can always resolve it. You can add some other things or people to this as well. But underneath that is the open all comments option. And if you click on that, it's going to open up your comments history. Now, you can also do that from just clicking over here on this icon for the open comment history. Either way, we know that Google likes to have multiple ways of doing things. So click and open all the comments, and then you can see everything that was commented for the sheet. You could do that for the current sheet too, and where that might make sense is if you've got a number of sheets laid out here. You can actually look at the comments for the sheets from whichever one you're on, or you can pare it down to just the current sheet that you're on. So that's kind of nice too. So if I did have more, say my Thursday parent teacher conferences was on a different sheet, I'd be able to still view the comments on there within the same sheets workbook that I've got open. So the way to add a comment, and this is pretty common with the Google tools, you can right click and just do comment and then insert your comment here. So for mine, like with this one, I just did, we're gonna do comment. So Brian Smith is on this one. So if I wanted to move him to Thursday, I would just simply put in Smith there and comment. And this is one too where we've used comments before on other Google applications that we've covered, like Google Docs and Google Slides. A lot of those same features. But in the context of this parent-teacher conference sheet, it's nice to be able to add those in for what family is coming at that time, what student can I expect at the different times. Another thing that you could do is if you underneath comment is you can also insert a note. So if you click on a space and you insert note, that will allow you to take some more, you could add some various things. So maybe for this, I just say, um, Brian's grade. Okay, so something like that, where I could just make a quick note for myself from maybe a previous conversation I had in an email, and then that note will save there. Okay, so for the next part, you'll notice that in the Monday section, I've got these color-coded drop downs. And for this, right, the idea is that if a time slot is taken, like in this case for 4 p.m., there's a student that I can expect on Monday, then I just choose scheduled for that. On the 4:30 time slot, no one has signed up for that parent teacher conference, and so it is read and available. The way to do this is, if we don't already have this laid out, obviously, if it's already laid out, you can copy and paste it, and that's a bit easier. But let's say that you need to set this up. So I'm going to select drop down, and on the right-hand side, you're going to notice that we have the ability to edit what is available as a drop-down choice, and we can choose the color for those as well. Now, there's also the issue of range. So in this case, because I only clicked on the first cell, it's going to apply that range as just noticing this cell. One easy way to change that is if I just drag down, now my drop downs will appear in all of those. So it duplicates them. But then with the editing side of things, what we would do, similar to what I did for this one, is our option 1, we're going to change to scheduled. So that time is no longer available. And we'll do available for this one. And then all I did from there, and depending on the context, and how you want to set things up, it starts you off by default with 2, but you could always add other options as well. You're not just stuck with that, the 2. So you can always add those if it's necessary. But then what we want to do is we want to change the color for these to our red and or to our green and red to match what we have in our Monday parent teacher conferences. And then we'll go ahead and click done. And it has our rules here. So this is our rule for the Monday conferences. This is our rule for the Thursday conferences. You can always add more, but for now, our rules are just going to be that. And then that allows us to put in our scheduled or available. It looks like this didn't copy, or the range didn't work. So one thing I can do is I can click on the first cell and the bottom. Oh, and I'll just hold shift and delete those. And then now I can select that cell and then pull that down. So maybe make sure you take a look at that. I copied mine first, and so it based it off of the original entry that I had in that cell and didn't show up with the schedule that are available. Now that it's in that cell, I can expand that down and duplicate it.
So very similar to how you would use a drop down in a Google Doc too, except now it's tied to that particular cell.
Okay. So the next thing that I want to take a look at is we want to look at the gradebook example and conditional formatting. So one thing that we can do when you first look at this gradebook example, it looks like there's a lot going on, and maybe we want to try to separate the data in a way that's a little bit more recognizable or friendly. So one thing I can do is if I click on format, you're going to see this conditional formatting here. I'm going to select, so just the final grade row. We're going to use the conditional formatting to separate these grades. So I'm going to click on format and do conditional formatting. And right now there's a default here for a single color. What I want to actually do is I want to make the colors change based on the entry. So if it's an A, we can leave it green. B would have its own color, C, D, F for all the grades. And so what we have to do is for our rules, whenever we're going to have an entry, we're going to put that the text contains a certain value. So in this case, I have to just make my first one here is to put A. Okay, so then whenever there is a that's entered as the text in the cell, that's going to show up with this rule of being a green letter. Now, one thing that we could do is maybe we want to change it so that we don't have the first cell showing up that way as well. In our range, what we might have to do as you're working with your own is just swap that out. So because this is column K, row 1, that's just the final grade heading. We don't need that to be color coded. So I'm going to change my range from K1 to K2. Okay. And then now it's gone. On that same note, depending on how you want to do this, you could do the whole row so that any new students will, that rule will follow. It goes all the way down to 1014 there, you can see. What I could do too is I could just select 31. That could be my final row that I am working with. And so then it's just going to be for this area here. Okay, so it all just depends on how you want it to operate. If it's a data entry where you've got a ton that you're going to continue to put in, it's good to put those rules in place because then the color coding will just occur whenever it reads that you've put in a certain entry.
And freezing that first row when you start adding names below it too is a good little tip. So then you can scroll and not lose what your column headings are.
Yep, exactly. And so that's a good point because then you can continue to just look through this data and this will stay. That's what you're saying, right, Jeremy? Okay. And so for this too, the entries are already there. Whereas maybe I make this rule beforehand so that when I put the entries in, that's ideally what I want to happen. It's, not that it's bad retroactively, but still it's to be able to think about the data that I've got to put in later on and have my rules set in place so that it makes my life a bit easier. So the second one is if we could then so this is for A, I'm going to add another rule for this range that is going to put in, and don't be confused here too. When you add another rule, it it will focus on that rule. You're not on the same one still, so don't be afraid to then change this to B and change your color. So for this one, we can put in that. Don't be confused when that happens. You'll be able to see all your conditional format rules when you're done, but within this window, it's going to still say A. Just swap it out for the new rule. You can even change like what rule you're working with. Either way, but then same thing will happen. You'll notice I'll hit add another rule for the C's and B will stay there. And so will my color. So I just want to swap those out and I want to put in my new rules here. Okay, and then I don't have any D's in this, so I'll just show you the one more here. We'll do a blue for that. That's really dark. Actually, let's do this. I had clicked add a new rule, so I'll just do done. And then let's see here. There's my rules. When I had done it initially, I clicked add new rule. So this is actually a good thing to show too, because if you accidentally did that like I did, I have two F's that are competing for that. So I want to just check my format rules within this range. And then I don't need this one, so I would just delete that. Okay, because you can kind of see it was overriding, that first rule was overriding the second color. So that happened by accident, but it's a good thing to show anyway. So yeah, so hopefully that can help with your organization, the way you look at your grade books or other things that you're working with. And Jeremy had some good tips earlier for some of that too, especially with the charts, being able to make charts off of these, and utilizing all these features for your Google Sheets.
Yeah, and I think getting in there and playing around with them and, experimenting with what you can and can't do. And, there's always that edit undo button if it does something you don't want it to. So
yeah.
Thanks for tuning into the Integrate This podcast. We hope you picked up some valuable insights to help you explore Google Sheets and its best features. Special thanks to co-host David Berner, and of course to all of our viewers for joining us on this digital exploration. I'm Jeremy Mikla. Until next time, keep integrating, innovating, and shaping the future of education. Happy teaching.
And don't forget to subscribe to our Integrate This YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and X for the latest tutorials and discussions in EdTech. Next week, Jeremy and I will explore an AI Chrome extension called Brisk Teaching, which has some amazing features for creating content from website articles, YouTube, and more. And we'll also look at the academic integrity piece of it with one of its best features, which is the revision history feature. So be sure to join us for that. See you next time.